Flame Stag, besides being ripe for jokes I refuse to make, also resides in a pretty interesting stage. This is the first segment in which we fight an ex-hunter, a moniker they no doubt spend the bulk of their free time patting themselves on the backs over. It's also one continuous ode to wall climbing and eventually a gangrene adult thumb. It becomes rather tiresome rather quickly to continuously need to repeat long vertical climbs without being a lazy tit about them, and the highlight of this stage makes sure that there's plenty of repetition. The fire column is made no harder really. The issue lies in the upcoming 3 sinking pillars. Now far be it for me to leave you with the impression that I give up on every fucking half-wit problem that doesn't resolve itself in 5 tries, but this is another one that gave me an excuse to take a break for other shit. The jumps required to make it across those are pixel perfect, and I use that term a lot, but here I really mean it. You need to jump when X is literally a blue fucking dot on his foot's width away from plummeting into the lava, and you need to do it for all 3 of the jumps. Saving each platform from descending up to the last possible millisecond seems to give just enough leeway to land on the wall of the last column and not unceremoniously plant yourself into the lake of fire right next to it. And thank God the rest of this stage is beyond simple, because of the several attempts this took, every one of the fucking things was lost trying to make that one set of jumps, and I spent more than a few lives just dive bombing into a bloody situation and hoping for the best. You can see these hassles being displayed readily on the screen where nothing I've just ranted about is happening anymore, so I'd better catch up. Surges isn't the alleged genius of the ex-hunters for no reason, since in direct combat he's a godforsaken idiot. This fight boils down to one long test of will between your ability to repeat the same 2 dodges for a minute or 2, and the urge to burst out laughing at the image of a wacky Russian stereotype vaulting through the air shooting projectiles out of his traditionalist army hat. The final climb is basically left over to remind you that, by the way, your jump is still fucking pathetic. A big problem with many vertical segments in X2 and 3 is that you regularly need to cross from one side of the room to the other, and save for a few forgiving gaps, that's usually easier said than done. You typically need to be well above where you're aiming for to clear it at all, and you're rarely given a free path to do this without some cleanup required. Now here that's a pain in the ass, but later on it becomes an actual threat. Especially when you're faced with timed situations where stupidly innocuous things like a small overhang become very exacting to climb past. Enemies clinging to walls and otherwise are also much harder to kill or maneuver around because the freedom with which you can play around on walls is so meager. Speaking of walls, I have no damn idea why I'm climbing this one. I think I went a little loopy after repeating the lava chute section enough times to list off every shade of brown used in the fucking terrain, so I treat an easy battle rather stupidly. I play pointless mind games with Flame Stag throughout the battle, and the one danger present, which is Flame Stag rocketing up the side of your wall, is something I invite upon myself a few times. Luckily he doesn't take a free opportunity to send me back to the fucking pillars. If a pattern hasn't emerged yet, give it another boss or 2, but most of you are probably getting the idea that X2's bosses aren't exactly the most complex AIs to ever grace the SNES. 90% of the bosses in this game, and that includes about half the X-Hunter fights, are completely manipulatable, and those that aren't, like Stag here or Wheelgator, are absolute jokes anyway. No dashing makes select battles nightmarish in ways you might or might not have seen coming. But restrictions can only do so much to augment challenge for bosses where an example of strategy is to repeatedly jump over the guy's head and amaze him to death.